So I'll dive back into expressions as I go along a little bit more, but we're going to move on to showing you guys how to paint maps. So in order to paint a map, what you need to do is, if there's already a map, you can just click the little paint icon, but you need to create a map for that attribute. So right here you can see, if I open this expression, you can see it's just returning 1, which means that everywhere on the mesh it's just giving me a density value of 500. So there's no real areas where there's a different density of hairs. So if I want to create a paint map to go ahead and modify that, I can go ahead and click on this drop down, click on create map. I'm going to get this little dialog box. You can usually use just the default name it has. If you want to create a backup or a secondary map, like if I'd want to like make a couple variations of this just to see, but I don't want to lose my old stuff, I can change this name to create a new ptext file. I want the map resolution to not be 5. 5 is pretty low. So I do something like 16 to 20. This is essentially like your resolution or your pixels per unit of your, you'll see that value somewhere else, TPU. It's kind of the same thing as pixels per unit of your ptext map. So if it's too low, you're going to get essentially like pixelization or faceting on your maps, and it starts to show up in your groom and it doesn't look that good. So it's usually a good idea to kind of make this a decent size. So 20 is pretty good. Click on create. You'll see it already switches to the paint tool, but we can't see anything right now. So there's a couple things that you want to make sure in order to see what you're painting. Let's go ahead and I'll just hide this so we can see it. First is my main mesh, my character mesh is actually overlapping the my scalp. So we're not seeing that. So I can come over to that channel box where I've put the face into a group. I'm going to set that to template mode. Okay, now I can see it, and now I can see it's white. The other thing is you want to make sure that you have Lambert material on your scalp. If you have like a blend material or a renderman material or something like that, it doesn't let you do the viewport painting, or you can do it, you just can't preview it. There's some tricky things you can do to make it so that you have a renderman material attached, but you're, in the viewport it's a Lambert, but just for this purpose, you don't have to do that. Just do Lambert. Just make sure it has Lambert material. Okay, so in this 3D paint tool, let's go ahead and open up XGen again. I'm currently painting this mask. You can see now this expression looks like this, right? So it's calling a mask at the descriptions location in a folder that created called paint maps mask. Whoop, let's not mess that up. And if I come over to the XGen demo, now I can come into the XGen folder, collections, hair description. Now I have paint maps mask, and that's where that ptext file is. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the paint tools. So this can be a little buggy sometimes too. You'll get a hang of it. There's little kind of workflows to, I'll try to cover them, but no guarantee I'm going to be able to get all of them. But there's like little things about like assigning and saving the texture over here and then saving it over here. Sometimes values, if you're not using a pure white or pure black value, you might get like little stray hairs that show up. Anyways, okay. So we're painting the density mask, and the density mask is going to be, we're controlling, like I want to control her hairline, right? I don't want it to have this perfect line. I kind of want to break it up and have like a softer transition. I'm not going to paint everything to make it look super nice. So I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and hide that hair again. So I'm going to go ahead, and it's all white right now, which you have to think about these pixel values on this ptext map as multipliers of these attributes. So if it's white, it's 1, right? So it's multiplying 1 by 500, which means it's 500. So everywhere it's white, it's just returning this value, whatever the density value is. If it's black, it's 0. So it multiplies that attribute by 0. So if I painted black anywhere, then it's going to multiply the density by 0, or by 0, and then that becomes 0, right? So and then anything in between is like 0.5 gray is going to be 50%, right? So you just think of it that way. I can hold B in my viewport to, and click and drag to interactively scale it, just like soft select. I can come down to stroke and turn on reflection if I want to turn on symmetry. And I'm going to come here, and we have our basic paint right here. I'm going to go ahead and just use it with a soft edge. Sometimes you'll use a really hard edge if you really want to make sure you're killing certain values. But let's go ahead and come in here and paint. So I'm going to come in here and just paint along here, right? It gets a little finicky or funny when you're like painting right along that edge right there. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just going to do like a really sloppy job just to kind of show you guys the basic premise of it. And you can see it's kind of painting across, which is really annoying when it does that. All right, and I'm not going to really worry about this area back here too much. So now let's pull it back a little bit. So I'll just kind of pull that back up to white. and then this, sideburns, maybe come up all the way up to here. Okay, and then maybe it kind of comes a little bit more to a V right there. Okay, so once, you can do this frequently, but as you're painting your map, don't worry about this side. I think that symmetry is probably causing a problem. But once I do that, then I click on save, and you'll see now that the hair is now not growing where I painted it black. You'll see some areas where it kind of still is, and that's because the value's not quite black. If you run into that issue, it happens a lot, trust me. You click on this little paintbrush to go back into painting. You'll set this value, you might want to open it, turn off color management, and just set the value to pure 0, black, and then set this to a hard brush right here. And then what I'll do is, you can see where these hairs are still growing, right? There's hair growing right there. And I'm going to come right here, and I'm just going to paint over this area right here. Click on save, and you can see that hair disappeared. So, I'm not going to do it by hair, but I'm just going to come over this area with that really hard brush, and just going to make sure that I'm not going to be growing any hairs out here. Okay, I'm just going to come around. So let's go ahead and preview that because I'm not seeing all the hairs down here. Click on that. Paint right there. Anyways, okay, click save, and a lot of those hairs should now disappear. Cool. So that's basic of how you're going to create or paint your maps. So this one's just creating density, which is where the hairs are growing. If I did it for a length map, so I'll create map, and we'll do 20 resolution, right? For this one, if I come in here and so it's going to multiply, so my max value is going to be whatever I set my length to. And you can see that disappeared, that length. Oh, shoot. That's something I probably should mention. So I'll mention it now. Whenever you create paint maps, it will override any expressions you have set. So this is a great example showing it here. So I had a slider value here, and when I created a paint map, it overwrote that expression with this one right here. So what I could do is I might go ahead and re-add that. So I'll $len is equal to, let's say just like 1, and then semicolon, and then I'm just going to set that range slider from 0.0 to 5. Click accept, and now I should have that range slider. And I want to make sure in here I'm multiplying my map by my length value. Okay, click apply, click accept. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll hide the hair for now, and I'll come in here, and if I want to have like shorter hair down here or right there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm painting my length map. I'll set this value, I can set it to black, but with like a really low opacity. And let's just go ahead and set this to a pretty soft brush. So I'll come in here, and I'm just going to kind of gradually build that up, right? And I might not want it to go fully all the way down to like black, right? Because they're going to get really short hairs, right? And then I'll click on that. Let's go back to object mode and click save. And right, so now you can see those hairs are shorter, right? Probably a little too short, but it's just multiplying the length value that I've set here. So let's go ahead and change this, right? It's multiplying this length value by that texture or that p-text map. So wherever it's, black or getting close to black, it's multiplying the length of the hair and making it shorter. So any of these attributes that you can create a map for, you can set it for. Really in here, you're only going to do that for your density and your length. Sometimes width, but not super frequent. And really quickly, the only thing I'd want to do is bring back that randomization value. So I'll come in here and $rand is equal to rand function, and then I'm going to set like 0.7 to 1.3, and then seed value, set a semicolon. Here's my map, and then I'm going to multiply the map and the length value and that rand function. And I can do them on different, not that, $rand, $rand. There we go. And I can do these on separate lines to make it a little bit cleaner, but I think that's good enough. Click apply, and now those hairs are a little bit randomized. So I just wanted to get that back. And one last thing I want to mention here with the paint maps is you'll start to be painting multiple maps. Make sure that you're not like loading this one up. So I'm loading up the length map, and then don't click on saving the density map. I haven't thoroughly tested it, but there's a chance that we're going to accidentally override the density map with your length map. I haven't done any tests with it. I don't want to mess it up right now, but you want to be careful not to do that kind of stuff. One other thing I like to do too is let's take a look at that density map. So we'll go ahead and paint that one. Let's hide the hairs. I haven't looked too much at these other settings, but I'll cover them really quickly. I don't use most of them, but we can flood the value, so it's just flooding all of this with a certain value. Down here, we're in paint mode. We can do like erase and clone. I don't use those really. I just paint a new value. But one thing I do use is this blur function. So this blur, you can set this intensity. The color doesn't matter. What's nice about that is we can do like a transition area up here. So I might set this to, let's do paint effects, blur, and you'll see where I paint over this, it's going to give me more of a transition, which is if you're getting like a really hard line sometimes, this is a great way to kind of like break that up and make it feel a little bit more natural. So now when I save that, right, there's going to be like a slower transition of density. You can't really notice it too much, but that can really kind of like break up some really hard lines that you create.